Mildred, and good morning, viewers and listeners.
Yeah, definitely. One would ask Daniel from Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, what is it about? What do you do?
The Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group is it's a coalition of organizations and individuals whose aim is to advocate for a pro-people budget or pro-poor budget. Of course, most people in Uganda are poor, so we want to see is the budget, the expenditure and revenue of the government actually addressing the needs of the ordinary Ugandans, you and me. Yeah. So that's the work we do basically. So, yeah. And
you also provide budget proposals. I would call them alternative budgets ahead of the budget reading. You normally come up with those alternatives. I think government should have done this and this. But I would ask, has government ever in one time considered one of your budget proposals probably?
Yes, we have been in this coalition has been existing since 2004 when we started it, and we have seen some tremendous change in the way government operates. Originally, for example, when the budget was going to be read, the way Ugandans were reacting was more waiting how much is going to increase on sugar, paraffin and all those tiny stuff. But now people are more, the language of the budget the minister reads has changed. It's really more user-friendly. Those days it used to be very complicated. Now it's a bit user-friendly, and two, the government has been more open in actually providing information on its budget, on how much it is proposing in advance. Actually, nowadays you know that taxes are going to be increased. It's now open. It used to be a secret. Even it gives you in advance how much is going to be spent on which sector, which sector is going to be affected. And also government has even started a website. It's called the it's called the budget, budget.go.ug, where you go, anyone can go there in that website and check on what government is spending the money. Of course, this one doesn't mean that the misuse has gone down, but at least there is more transparency, and you know, any citizen can know what's going on in their community or what the government is doing for them. But also some of the proposals we have been pushing forward have been actually enacted. For instance, last time we had a very big proposal on removing, of course, removing taxes on water and the paraffin. Of course, we aren't able to succeed in all, but at least one eventually succeeded. And there are so many others which we can point out which have been enacted by government.
Before we go to the main, just lastly, before we go to the main gist of our discussion today, a Ugandan out there would ask, or you would love to educate them, why would I be interested in the budget and knowing about what's in the budget as a Ugandan?
Yes, first and foremost, why you should be interested in Uganda and knowing what's in the budget. One, the budget is your own money. You know, people think that government. Actually, I get surprised when I hear leaders saying we are helping. No, there is no one a leader who is acting as a public servant is helping. It's our money. We pay taxes on a daily basis. Some people don't know that they pay taxes, because even when I'm studying here, I'm paying taxes. Because WBS will pay VAT, we will pay other taxes. When you are traveling on the border, you pay taxes. When you buy soap, you pay taxes. All those taxes constitute what government uses to provide services. So it's our money. So we have a right. Any Ugandan has a right, even within the constitution, to know how government is spending its money. And actually, Article 17 of the Constitution says every Ugandan has a right to preserve and protect public property, including money. So you have to know what government is using your money for, and where the money is coming from, and whether actually the way government collects the money from you is fair.
But what some of the push factors away from people getting interested in knowing what's in the budget is the jargons, the terms that are used, the figures that most Ugandans are not well acquainted with. What do you have to say about that? I think probably it's driving them away.
No. I think my experience in this work for some time, more than 10 years, what I've realized that, one, the language has changed tremendously. When I was growing up, the budget, maybe I was young, but even then I'm a trained economist. The way they used to read this budget was a bit academic and very complicated. Nowadays there has been some change. And two, the information on the government budget is more open nowadays. It is easier to know what is being spent on. If you can go to the website, or if you don't have the website, you can even by law, all local governments and other spending agents are supposed to publish the money they spend on public notice boards. It's by law. They some of them don't do it, but people have visited so many districts and everything is displayed. Of course, there is more openness in what government is trying to do. Of course, does not stop money being lost, because there are other ways people can do it. But at least the budget is no longer complicated. Those who are interested would definitely understand it and use it to demand accountability from their leaders. For me, it's really not. There is some movement, and I want to commend government for that. There is a movement in making the budget more open and more easier to understand than originally. Nowadays, I give an example. The government in the budget nowadays, they give you details. For instance, the district, they give you details on where money is going. You can actually know that a school A will receive this amount, is budgeted to get this amount of money. Of course, what is budgeted sometimes is not what is eventually received, but at least you know that this school is supposed budgeted for this amount of money, and it's openly written in the public document, which anyone can access if they're interested.
And of course, kudos to the civil society organizations, just like, you know, we'll take on to the real issue that is biting so hard right now. But, well, very many people have tried to shy away from it. It's the issue of the foreign aid cut. How biting is that issue? How big is it for the Ugandan economy? The issue of aid cut is a bit, it has caused a bit of arguments pro and against. One, of course, it is important the country is wins off of aid, technically. It's really, really important, because then we can determine our destiny. You cannot be independent when you are still depending on someone's support. Unfortunately, we are still not there. Although government budget shows that the donor aid is only a small fraction of the national budget. That's not true. There is a lot of misinformation in that. One, the government claims that this year it will be around 20% of the budget. But that one is an assumption based on a bit of academic calculation. One, all the sectors of government I know of, from health, education, health, and work, these roads, energy, service sector,
they are largely, even infrastructure projects. Actually, almost of the infrastructure project is donor funded. I want someone to give me one example of a road which has been done by government purely. No, nowhere. Or, for instance, now you see all the KCCA work now, which people are seeing here doing done, is a World Bank loan. So aid has two forms. There are those which they give you as a grant, and there are those which are loans. Most of the money government spends is from government loans, in either loans or grants. So the issue of aid is very, very critical, and I think it is coming at a point, these potential aid cuts, I'm calling them potential because we haven't really gotten the official communication from most of the donors. A few of them, 3 or 4, have announced, but others are still looking at it. But the thing is that we haven't got official or final figures on that. The potential impact is that, one, most of the sectors will be affected. And this is evident from the budget proposals for next year, where it has been mentioned that most of the sector, either their budget is going to be cut or will remain the same. Reason being that, I give an example. There are sectors which I know, like whose budget is up to 40% funded by donors. Even that is the money which the donors put in the government directly. But if you add on money which they spend within the sector outside the government system, then it goes to around 80%. Like, a classic example is the water. A sector called water and environment. 40% of their budget for this year is funded by donors. You go to sectors
with the aid cuts, we are definitely stifling that.
Definitely. The donors will not cut. I have a feeling they will not cut entirely the amount. They cannot, because aid is a business for them. But they will cut some percentage, and that one will affect service delivery. all the development component of the budget, the national budget, around 30% is the development budget for capital expending, like construction works and building roads and other things. Most of the development budget is 90% donor funded.
With Uganda being about the 20th most donor-funded country, the president seems to say actually our problem as Uganda, while he was signing the anti-homosexuality bill into law, he actually made a statement that left many Ugandans thinking with questions in their minds that our problem is aid.
No, I think for me, for the experience of aid is that it has good and bad. It's a necessary evil. You sometimes when you are poor you need aid, but our challenge in Uganda is not aid. The challenge is how we use aid. There are countries which receive bigger aid than Uganda. For instance, Israel receives a lot of aid from the Americans. Egypt, a lot of, but is Egypt like Uganda? Is Israel like Uganda? A lot of countries in Eastern Europe have received a lot of aid, and they are moving. After the Second World War, the Marshall Plan the Americans put up, Eastern European countries developed on American aid. Yeah. So did they develop? The thing is that when aid comes to our countries, how is it utilized? That's our biggest challenge. And sometimes leaders then turn around and blame those who give us aid. For instance, if I give an example, I know very well that World Bank funds Uganda government through loans and grants. You go to the World Bank and ask them, the absorption capacity of World Bank loans is 20% per year. Why? I mean, the World Bank commits amount of money to government, and only 20% of that money is actually government can actually absorb it. Well, they don't even have the capacity to absorb those small loans, because you know how government operates. To make a road, it can take a minimum of I don't know, maybe 10 years. Yeah. Rotating around. Of course, that's why Chinese have circumvented those bureaucracies of government. They do it themselves. I'm looking at you want something, they say, what do you want? You want Nambola? If they had given government money to build Nambola, I can be sure it will not be there.
Now, Daniel, I'm looking at the president's statement coming from the concern of strings attached. The strings attached to the aid that is given by the foreign.
There is no way. If you don't want strings attached, then you don't ask for a loan. There is no person, even if yourself you want to give someone money, you do just give without strings attached? No. Strings attached has to be there because they know that first and foremost, some of the strings attached are very, very critical for us as the recipient, the citizen. One, they help you to protect us from our money being stolen. There are some of them, because I give an example. Some of the stringent procurement procedures the donors use help to mitigate fraud. Okay. But does not eliminate, but helps to mitigate fraud and stealing of public money. If there were no, I give an example. When the donors gave Uganda government money without strings attached, using the budget support through the office of the Prime Minister, you know what happened? It ended up in someone's pocket. A lot of money disappeared. So sometimes it's better you put some strings to at least monitor. Of course, does not remove any stealing. Some money will be lost technically, but at least 80% will reach. But if you leave it open to government has been receiving budget support where the donors give government money directly to the national budget, to the treasury without strings attached. Every year we have been receiving around $70 million, which is roughly 1.something billion, 1.something trillion. But then that money, it sometimes ends up in wrong priorities. The wrong priorities are very clearly stated. You know them. They end up in increasing emolument of MPs. It will end up in increasing emoluments for public servants. Of course, not like salaries, but in terms of travel allowances, medical allowances. It will not go to anything which affects an ordinary Ugandan. So the strings are important. But the only way we can avoid those strings is that you have to raise our income as a country to win off donors.
Do you think we are capable of raising the income that could fund entirely the budget?
Actually we can fund the budget without donors. We can.
How possible is that?
It's possible if we removed all the excesses and misuse. One of the biggest challenges you have is the high level of corruption. A lot of money is lost in the government systems. Two, there is a lot of inefficiencies in government spending. I give an example. There are sectors which receive money and they fail to spend it. Local governments receive money and they can't use it. They take it back to government. I give an example. I was recently sometime in Mpiji, and then they were telling there's a grant which government sends, and also it's a donor-funded project called the Community Driven Development (CDD). They received I think 65 million. It's more money really, but then the district said at the end of the year they didn't know how to use it. They took it back to the government.
But what is the problem?
The problem is that
the problem being?
People, the problem is that government has procedures to follow in the use of the money. But sometimes people don't follow procedures. Two, there is no capacity to actually. The capacity is actually a reason. There is no capacity at a local level to spend the money. It's one thing to give you a lot of money in your account, but another to spend it within the guidelines. And efficiently, of course. Efficiently. And what most civil servants fear is that they think that they fear to spend money because they think maybe if something goes wrong I'll lose my job, so you rather leave it there. And two, sometimes it's a deliberate action by people because like the delays in civil works can be caused because someone is wanting a certain company to get the job, but that company is still working in another place, hasn't finished, so they wait until that company has finished and then they bring it on board. But of course time does not allow, so eventually they are forced to refund the money. So it's really sometimes bureaucratic tendencies in a way aimed at stealing the money, because those are tricks you can use. And two, sometimes it's a deliberate action by civil servants at a higher level. They tell you, please make sure that this amount of money is returned. So you have no choice. There is a lot of bureaucracy in government and dealing with civil servants. But then I'll give you an example of America after the signing of the anti-homosexuality bill that decided that the relationship between them and the government of Uganda is not going to be as it has been, and they're opting actually to channel some of the aid, some of the money through private sector. Do you think that would actually save on the money that is lost through misuse and then returning the money without being used? Do you think dealing with the private sector would change anything? Yes and no. The reason being, one, in Uganda we don't have a private sector. Yes, what we have is a masquerading private sector. Reason being, most of the people who claim to be private sector. You will substantiate that, yes, definitely. Most of the people I can bet that I want very few, if you count, very few. Most of them depend on government. They are really an extension of government. And what are they doing? They are supplying government. So if there is no money in government, then they cannot operate. What are they going to use the money for? So you find that, and that's why you find that in most cases, the private sector is so entangled within the government system. Most of the people in government are the one running private businesses. So if you remove money from government and give it to private sector, what is going to happen is that the private sector, which depends on government, will not have where to spend the money. There will still be a calling between government. So somehow what will happen is that there's going to be an imbalance in supply and demand. You have the money, I don't have, the government has the money to supply. Because if I give an example, if you are an investor and I produce textbooks which I supply to government, and government can't buy the textbooks, what would happen? Even if you give me thousands of money and I have a lot of textbooks, eventually the system will not absorb the money. So the issue is, for me, government still have the role, and I think aid should try as much as possible to pass through government systems despite its weaknesses, to ensure that at least the government has the obligation constitutionally to provide goods which are relevant or which are critical to the ordinary citizens. The private sector is profit oriented. They might produce goods which are not relevant to the citizens, and sometimes private sector have what they call the weaknesses. That's why government comes in to rain on them. If you just left them to operate, the way they will invest, it depends on what they think the market is. Sometimes you find that they might not invest in areas which actually affect Ugandans. I give an example. Uganda needs to invest heavily in agriculture.
Definitely.
Which we have not done. Government has already said that's the work of private sector. But you see what's happening. Actually, what's happening is that the total collapse of the sector.
That actually takes me to the issue of prioritization during budgetary allocations. Do you think we are doing the right priorities as government when we are allocating specific monies to the different sectors of the economy?
Yes and no. On intention, the intention of government sometimes, like recently, has been to improve infrastructure and infrastructure and energy, which is, for me, is okay. But also they have just forgotten to think about the sector which employs the majority of the Ugandans, which is the agriculture. And that what is causing, if you went up country or in other places in Uganda, you find that the level of poverty, although the national figures show improvement, is alarmingly high. In Kampala, maybe things are better because most of the things are concentrated in this Kampala. But outside there, just go to Mpija and you see how people look and feed, because most of them are really agricultural based. Unfortunately, the programs which government put in place to support them are not working efficiently, like NADS and others. So the privatization is still a challenge. On paper, it looks to be a bit fine, but when you go at the level of implementation, it's really challenging. The sectors which affect Ugandans usually are the ones which are most affected when there are cuts, like these budget cuts. Sorry, these aid cuts are going to actually to affect most of the poorest people, because they're going to cut money from sectors which affect them. When the World Bank withheld the $90 million, which is almost 200-something billion for the health project, strengthening health project. Now the Prime Minister was saying, now you see, now we are stuck. $90 million is not a lot of money, but you see the impact it's going to make on the health sector is going to be immense.
It's very huge.
So somehow, when these cuts come, they rain on the weak. I call them weak sectors, because there are sectors you cannot cut money. I give an example. You cannot go and cut money for public administration. No way. You are not going to cut money of parliament. You won't cut money of the state house. You won't cut money of the office of the president. You won't cut money of salaries of civil servants. What you're going to do, you're going to look for those. You can go and cut money of those hospitals,
agriculture,
the sectors which no one will complain. But these big guys, you cannot go and cut money of big people, and eventually that's what happens. In our budget, what happens usually when the government makes a budget, what they do after they have made a budget, after like 3 to 6 months, they bring what they call a supplementary budget to increase the amount of money they are giving.
So are we definitely looking at the aid cuts also going to impact more on the less privileged communities? Let me say, they are going to actually be marginalized come the 2014-2015 budget reading. They
will. Remember, in the next coming financial year, we are also preparing for Generation 2016. We are having a national census, and also the rolling out of these IED projects. All those projects are very expensive, and you know, also they susceptible to a lot of corruption. I must say, I'm waiting for actually.
You're becoming a prophet of.
You know, if I was a government, I would put a commission of inquiry in advance for the IED and others, because I know what will happen. So they will take a lot of money. Then there are mandatory exercises. So somehow, somewhere, government has to look for the money. There is already a cut from the donors. So eventually, I predict a lot of challenges in the health sector, a lot of challenges in most of the roadworks, a lot of challenges even in the energy sector. The only way out we have, at least for now, is that the donors are willing to send part of the money through NGOs and also the private sector. Unfortunately, those other arms of society don't reach the real people. They don't reach the ordinary people. It doesn't reach the ordinary people if you pass aid through NGOs and private sector. Because an NGO, even if you aggregated all of them in Uganda, they can't absorb 4 trillion. They cannot. The best they can take maybe 1 trillion, and even then, what are you going to do with it? Most of the NGOs in Uganda are advocacy oriented. They are not providing services to communities. They are just people who talk and make things
and that's
work.
actually the problem with Ugandans, that most of the NGOs, most of civil society organizations are actually should we call them radios? They keep on talking and there is no action.
No, I think there are reasons why this is happening. There has been a lot of changes in the behavior of NGOs. Originally, after the NRA war, NRM war, when government came in, the current government came into power, there was a lot of need for provision of humanitarian relief. Most of the NGOs did humanitarian work. But as we moved along, most of the NGOs are also funded by external donors. There was a shift, donors shifting NGOs from that to advocacy work, because they discovered, which I also believe in, the best institution to provide the services to people is government. No one should deceive you on that, because the government can do things which can't be done by an ordinary person or whatever institution. So they said, let's give, the donors give money government, and they said, you NGOs go and make the noise, point out the weaknesses of government. The work of NGOs and basically the civil society organizations in advocacy is to point out the wrongs of government, things which are not moving, where services are not moving, and also helping to empower the people, the ordinary people, to be responsive to receiving the government services and demanding accountability. So that's why NGOs push themselves there. Now, if the donors want to increase more money to NGOs, that means then most NGOs have to go back to humanitarian work, which I don't think nowadays sells a lot. Because we also discovered that for NGOs going to provide boreholes, it's like you are making government miss or lose out its obligation. Government becomes, there are places I know, if for instance during the era, if there were no NGOs, feel for their country. Okay, this patriotic whatever law will not will not apply, because people are saying people are not patriotic. That one is because
you don't love the country.
People love the country, only for they don't see the reason why they should. But the thing is that people are not part of the country. You know, when you like, if you're in a home, I give a classic example is most of the maids in our homes. They don't see themselves a part of that home. They sleep there, eat there, but they feel like they are not part, because their contribution is neither welcomed, or they think their value is not they are not valued.
Not felt in the home,
they are not valued what they are doing. So most Ugandans also, if I'm a Ugandan and I have never contributed to government directly, of course I pay indirectly, but not directly. I don't pay tax. I don't pay any taxes to government. Why should I care if I found that a government vehicle with a UG number plate, those red number plates are public vehicles, it is failing Sunday on a Sunday? Of course, and a citizen will ask, why should a government vehicle fail a person be on someone's construction site on a Sunday? Why should a government vehicle be going to visit a farm of a private farm on a weekend, even a weekend day? You find it there failing goats, pigs, whatever, and then no one is bothered. Why should the vehicle be carrying sacks of like charcoal, like he's going to trade? Some of the people, I think, they trade in charcoal and using a public vehicle, and no one is bothered. It shows that people, but if that money, if people attached that vehicle, UG number plate, to the money they paid in taxes, then they will say, ah, this man. I have ever tried it, ask you, why are you misusing a public vehicle? Of course, the reaction will be that human, you know, someone said, meaning, you know, when in Uganda, when you do something right, then you are wise aching. So you do the wrong way. When you drive properly on a lane, you have gezi. If you don't overtake on the wrong, so everything has to be done negatively. So, but when you do it like that, if people get that feeling that this is my money, actually people should look at any public office as their money.
There is no attachment between the people.
If I come to WBS, I don't say this is my money. But if I go to a public office, I told civil servant, this is my money, please. And one time I told these registration people, you know, the registration, these guys who get birth certificates, I take certificate of my children, and the woman told me at around
Uganda Registration Services Bureau.
Yes, half-past me that now it's time, lunchtime. I told her, madam, I've never seen a government office which stops working at 12:30. If you don't want to work on me, I'm going to. Because first of all, I pay your salary because I'm taxpayer. Two, so if you can't do your work, then get someone else to do it. Or else, I'm going to report to your boss. She would turn around. After something, she came back and said, what's your name? The people around said, ah, you man, why cause gas problems? I said, which problem? This is a public servant. If she doesn't do her work, then she should leave. Because she's doing a job which is I pay for. If taxpayers did not pay taxes directly or indirectly, the president will not exist. Because there is no any other source of money government gets apart from our taxes. Now if the donors leave, which is for me is okay, then we should see how they will survive. They have to survive on our taxes. That's why they are proposing taxes on water, on cigarette, on airtime. Everything is to be taxed.
Yeah. Now, so Daniel, in your opening remarks, you did talk about something that was very, very catchy. That is, Uganda needs to win off the donor aid. We need to win off from receiving, you know, handouts every now and then. But I would definitely ask on the cross-section of Ugandans that how are we going to take ourselves through the winning process? How possible is that?
The possibility of getting off donor aid is very easy. One, we have to improve on our economy, the output, what we produce. You know, Uganda we produce less than we consume, which is a tragedy. Someone gave a classic example. You go to Ginger Road, look at that road. The most damaged part is the left-hand side. Why? Because when vehicles are going on the other side, when you're coming from Ginger, when people are going that side, they are empty. When they are coming back, they are full of Chinese fake products and other things. So you find that so when you are going back, it's technically they would have gone with maybe full of merchandise.
Yeah,
like agricultural products and other, but nothing. So when you're coming back, going back empty. Actually, when you look at also the trailers, their tires, they have a mechanism, put them up, they are empty. When you are coming back, you are heavy. So we produce less than we consume.
What we consume.
So most of the, if you look at the agricultural products, which is our comparative advantage, is zero. So in that case, unless we increase productivity in the sector, and we have the potential to do so, what we need to do is government will to put money in agriculture, and I mean not in the agriculture office, in things which help an ordinary farmer to produce better. I have tried farming and I left it because I discovered it is too expensive to do agriculture in Uganda, unless you need to be, all those people you have seen in TV pretending that they are doing well. There is somewhere, somehow, they have gotten a subsidy from somewhere.
It takes persistence for you to stay.
Not persistence. Doesn't persistence. It's about if you don't get support in the form of a subsidy. I give an example. Some people have big farms in government. All those people have big farms. You go and make an investigation, you will find they're all public servants. Why? They are getting an indirect subsidy. We don't know. First of all, I know some people when they are going to their farms, they put in siren. So they are given space.
No jam.
No jam. But
so
that fellow is going to visit his farm. I know one of them visits his farm. He's using a siren.
Oh, yeah.
Then he moves very fast. When he's coming back, the same. For you, if you're going to your farm, you have to drive in the jam, spend 2 hours to reach Masaka. The other fellow has reached Sadem. So he's using government vehicle with the escort, with the fuel. Now, how can you compete with that kind of Ugandan? So they're already benefiting from those. Those are what you call private sector. They have their own benefits. Now, unless we increase productivity of other people who are not in government, by government declaring a direct subsidy to farmers, it doesn't matter if I'm a farmer, I have a good agricultural project, because most people have land in Uganda. People have square miles. People, you find them in our bars talking that they have 10 square miles in there. I have so many people
but they're redundant.
But they're just posing around in. I have square miles for speculation. So if this fellow who has 10 square miles, you can say we are giving you a subsidy of this $1 million. Please go give us the following output. That's what Asian Tigers did. They put a commission for that. You will get a subsidy by providing evidence that you can do the work, and every year you are evaluated. If you perform well, the subsidy is expanded and it's competitive, not this business of pinpointing people, and then that's how they manage to increase productivity. But now for us, we are there trying to pick small things and putting money, small money, very tiny money. That money now quite around 370 billion is nothing. It's nothing. It can't do a lot because most of it stays in Kampala for running the ministry. So unless we increase productivity within the sector, we cannot win over donors. Two, we have to cut on we have to be frugal in the way we use our resources. Are there where places where we can cut spending? They are there. Why should Parliament go and construct? For example, why should the Parliament go and construct a parking of I don't know 3.something billion? For what?
They can pay parking 2,000.
Where would they get money to pay their salaries? Assuming that money was spent in rice farm in Chivimba. Whatever billion they spent on that park, if they had put it in a farm in Chivimba to increase the farm's production, how much income will you get at the end of 2 years? How much income is government getting from that parking?
Of course,
do you need a parking for MPs? You can as well say MPs you can use public means. I see most people in Europe use public means where you should everyone drive and park their vehicles there. For what use? Okay.
Now, Daniel, our time seems to be very against us, but finally, in your final remarks, I would also ask, which proposal are you giving to government now that we're just a few months to the budget reading and we are expecting some budget cuts which are really going to impact?
the proposal I have, one, I think the government has to, because it's not yet time to really completely win off donors. Even if you are winning off a child, those ladies, you know, they don't do it abruptly, like, pooh, tomorrow you say, now don't touch me anymore. You know, of course, they need to negotiate, have a dialogue with the donors, try to understand their points, and try to address what donors want the government to do. And also avoid just developing regulations which are becoming now. I don't know, it's a fashion nowadays. Everything is regulated. You have to think twice some of those regulations. Two, the government has to start, as I told you, investing in production. Three, reducing on the excessive wastages which are happening now in government, and they are known evidence everywhere. They have been documented. If we go around that, we can overcome this challenge. But one thing I want to request government is that they should not make a blunder of cutting funding to sectors like health, education and agriculture. They should look for other ways. I know it's very hard, but at least they should look for other ways of increasing efficiency within the budget. But at least maintain the same level of funding from the donors. For the taxation, I have no problem. They should tax. But the issue is we should see more transparency in the tax collection. Definitely. You and I should become more open to us about how much money they are collected from us, other than just a few small matters. Okay, well said. Thank you very much, Daniel, for your time. And of course, on the issue of bending towards the terms and conditions of the donor aid, of course, that will be another discussion, because sometimes it is moral, social, and all that applies. But thank you so much also for joining us here on the Morning Flavor. It's been wonderful. Web Daniel Sebakija is right on my neck. He wants me out of here. And yes, I'm out. Let's have him give you the sports updates. Okay.